This video is on creating line graphs, which are also called time series graphs, which is also called a connected line graph, so it goes by lots of different names. A line graph is going to show a relationship over time. It does not have to be over time, but that is the typical type of bar graph. So for our data this time, we're looking at stock prices for this company called PCWP for the last 6 months. So in January, the price was $3.50. In February, the price was $5.50. In March, the price was $7. In April, the price was $6. In May, the price was $4.50. In June, the price was $8. So again, similar to the bar graphs, we have an X and Y axis. We label prices on the left side. The time usually goes along the x-axis. In this case, our time is in months. So we have January, February, March, April, May, and June. For our price, we're going by dollars. Again, you should be labeling your units. Always go by equal units. That is an important feature of any graph. And so we're going to start by creating dots at our locations. So in January, we were at 350. In February at 550. In March at $7. In April at $6. In May at $4.50. In June at $8. And then we go through and connect the dots. And of course, having a ruler to connect them and make those lines nice and neat certainly makes your graph look neater. And so there you have our line graph or our connected line graph, whichever you want to think of. Now, last but not least, I want to go over some things that you should think about as you're making any type of graph. There are things to consider. One of the first things to consider is if you have a small set of data, perhaps 20 items or less. You might want to use a table instead of a graph. But in order for us to practice our techniques, I'm going to probably have you use small sets of data to practice your techniques. So some of our data sets may not be very large, may not be over 20, but we're doing it just so that we can practice our techniques. Don't use a lot of extra to distract from the data being displayed. We had talked about this earlier with the picture graphs, is not to distort the data. And this can happen too with the scales that you use, not only with the pictures. And in particular, this happens with area and volume with your pictures. If your scales are too large or too small, it doesn't show the change in the data correctly. So it's important to be very conscious about that. Something that's just kind of unusual that tends to affect graphs is not to use slant lines and dots, overuse of dots, I should say. And there are some other features as well that can cause your graph to look like it's moving. And that illusion can be misleading on your graph. So you don't want that to happen. You want to try to prevent that. There is a little symbol that's like a zigzag symbol when you need to skip from 0 . You should always make your graph from 0 to whatever value, but sometimes it's just impossible to go like from 0 to 1,000 and you need to skip. So there is a symbol, kind of like a zigzag symbol, that you can use when you need to do that, so that you then can make some smaller units. But you should not skip from 0 to a number, but there is a technique that you can do to use that. You do want to provide your titles and labels and units, and of course cite any sources that you may be using for your data or information. So these are just things that you need to keep in mind as you're completing graphs. We need to have certain features and techniques in mind as we work on them.